The film starts when, after losing a large business because he insulted his client's girlfriend, alcoholic advertising executive Joey Duckett becomes drunk. His wife becomes angry when he misses daughter Mia's third birthday party because he is too preoccupied with his business, and Joe reacts furiously. He goes on a spree of drinking, vomiting and passing out after hurling a lot of verbal abuse at his wife. He ends up at his old friend Chucky's pub. On the other hand, Chucky refuses to let him in since he is drunk. Joe sees a Korean lady selling toys on the street with a yellow umbrella and buys a plastic duck for his daughter. When Chucky leaves his bar, he discovers the toy on the sidewalk, but no trace of Joe. As he wakes up, he finds himself confined in what appears to be a hotel room. His unidentified kidnapper gives him food and personal hygiene supplies, but refuses to disclose why he is being held captive. The room is smoked now and again so that his kidnappers might interfere while he is unconscious. Joe experiences regular hallucinations in a solitude and befriends a mouse, only to have it given to him for his next meal. Joe comes upon a news broadcast claiming that his ex-wife Donna has been raped and murdered and that he is the major suspect. Mia, their 3-year-old daughter, is a cello prodigy adopted through the welfare system. Joe decides to improve himself in his cell. Joe quits drinking and gets in shape over the next 20 years, determined to flee an exact retribution. He builds a list of all who would desire to imprison him and writes letters to Mia. One day, he sees Mia on TV saying that if she ever saw her father, she would forgive him. A man named Channy keeps a camera on him at all times. Shortly after, Joe is injected with a sedative. He wakes up with his daughter's photo on his phone. He spots the street vendor with the umbrella that sold him the duck and pursued her, using his newfound physical strength to thrash members of a football team who believe he is a Rasmir. Following the trail, he encounters Mary Sebastian, a homeless care nurse who senses something is wrong with him but can't get him to open up to her if he ever needs assistance. She gives him her card. He returns to Chucky's pub and explains his story to him. On a cell phone, Joe receives a call from a man who introduces himself as a stranger and mocks him. Joe collapses from dehydration after failing to identify the caller, and Chucky contacts Marie for assistance. Marie is stirred emotionally by Joe's letters to Mia and agrees to assist him further as he heals. She assists him in locating a Chinese restaurant that provided him with food when he was being held captive. Joe follows a delivery from the restaurant to the warehouse where he is held captive. He locates the prison and gains entry after killing a few bodyguards and being confronted by the owner, Channy. Joe tortures him by cutting pieces of skin from his neck, only to discover that Channy is the custodian of a large institution. Channy hands Joe a cassette with the voice of the man who ordered Joe's detention. Joe fights off multiple guards on his way out and collapses from his injuries, only to be rescued by a mysterious stranger who takes him back to Chucky's. When Joe returns to Chucky's pub, he finds the stranger with his bodyguard hanging buck and the woman with a yellow umbrella. The stranger claims to have kidnapped Mia, but if Joe can figure out the stranger's identity and the cause for his confinement in 46 hours, he'll free Mia, give Joe diamonds, and commit suicide as proof of Joe's innocence in Donna's murder. Joe discovers that Channy and his men are attempting to avenge Marie by attacking her. Johnny apprehends him after speeding to her house. The stranger phones Channy and offers to pay for Joe's freedom just before Channy is ready to slash and torment him. Joe and Marie are set free by Channy. Marie determines that the ringtone for the stranger's call is the theme song of Evergreen Academy, which Joe attended but is now closed and shuttered, using a music identification app on her phone. Joe and Marie search down Edwina Burke, Joe's previous school's headmistress. Joe slips into the flat while Marie distracts her. Marie tries to persuade Miss Burke that Joe could be innocent and that someone from his former school is trying to frame him for his wife's murder. Joe met his future wife in school but was a pretty selfish student, so she discovers he may have made some enemies there. Adrian's name and photo are found in a yearbook, showing that he attended the same high school as Joe and Chucky. The school is now closed. but all of the paperwork remains. When Joe and Marie arrive, they discover the gate is shut, so they decide to return later in the evening. Meanwhile, Chucky conducts internet research and discovers that Adrian had a hospital built in memory of his deceased sister. He calls Joe and leaves a message, saying it's all about the whore as he suddenly remembers something. Adrian, unfortunately, intercepts the transmission. He goes to the bar and kills Chucky, enraged by how Chucky refers to his sister. Joe and Marie check into a motel to tend to Joe's wounds, and they end up having love. They have no idea that Adrian is watching them through a camera. Joe and Marie break into the prep school later that evening, discovering evidence that Adrian and his sister had registered there. Joe recalls harassing Adrian's sister after hearing Chucky's message during his bullying days. During a school party, he later watched Adrian's sister having sex with a man in the garden. He had simply believed it was a teacher from the school and had told Chucky about the girl's promiscuous reputation. Joe and Marie go to the school library to look for newspaper items. Adrian and his wealthy family reportedly moved to Luxembourg within a year, where a tragedy occurred, killing the entire family but leaving Adrian seriously injured. Joe recognizes the man having sex with Adrian's sister as the girl's biological father. Outside the prep school, Joe and Marie discover Chucky's severed tongue in a box in their car. They return to the motel. Stunned, Joe receives a photo of Mia, severely bruised on his phone. Despite Marie's protests, Joe leaves Marie in safety and goes to confront Adrian. After a brief fight with his bodyguard and killing him, Joe visits Adrian and informs him that he has solved his riddle. Adrian blames Joe for the catastrophe that befell his family and imprisoned him. Joe didn't seem aware the sex scandal featured an incestuous relationship until this evening. Adrian says it's far more complicated than that. His father was a pedophile who had separate sexual encounters with him and his sister. They were pleased with it at first, but when a sex scandal broke out at school, the sister's image was ruined and they were forced to relocate to Luxembourg. Finally, the father murdered his wife, daughter, and himself, badly injuring Adrian. Adrian claims that Joe's actions cost him everything, but he maintains his word and takes Joe to visit Mia. Joe discovers that the crime drama he watched on TV while incarcerated was staged and exclusively shown to him. The Mia he saw on the show is a professional actress Adrian has been scouting since she was a child. Joe is enraged and strikes Adrian, forcing him to transport him to his true daughter. According to Adrian, Joe never asked the appropriate question. Instead of asking why he was imprisoned, he should have asked why he was let free. Adrian then goes on to reveal more photos of the actual Mia. Adrian ensured she was raised when her mother died and became Marie. He orchestrated everything for her to get hooked and acquire a father complex so that when she met Joe, she would feel sorry for him, and the two would have sex as a form of torment for Joe. As Adrian picks up his phone to call Marie, Joe is devastated by the news. Joe begs Adrian not to tell Marie about the information, instead offering himself to Adrian to do with as he pleases. Adrian simply replies that he has no desire to kill Joe, because he has Joe exactly where he needed him to feel Adrian's misery. Adrian shoots himself after completing his vengeance. Joe tries to make things right with Marie or Mia and even Channy by promising him money and arranging for him to be re-imprisoned using Adrian's gems. Joe is horrified and writes Marie a letter informing her that they will never see each other again. He gives her the majority of the gems and uses the rest to pay Channy to return him to his hotel room confinement. And that's where the film ends.